Latin America is a land of challenges and opportunities, a mix of hope, people, and biodiversity. More than 1 billion hectares of natural forest cover 46% of its territory. Latin America has 464 marine protected areas distributed over 50 million hectares. Its natural resources hold the equivalent of more than 1 billion barrels of oil in renewable energy alternatives. Latin America and the Caribbean harbor 40% of all the animal and plant species on our planet. 7 of the mega-diverse countries are located here: Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Mexico, and Peru. Forest cover in this region is equal to 1.8 hectares per person, compared to 0.6 hectares in the rest of the world. More than 28% of all water resources on the planet and 2 of its largest watersheds, the Amazon River and Paraná Plata. Cultural and ethnic diversity. 15% of the total population is indigenous. Ethnic and linguistic diversity is greater in the interior of each country. More than 500 languages are spoken, and there are over 400 different indigenous peoples in the region. The wealth of Latin America and the Caribbean is threatened by the reduction, fragmentation, and degradation of its natural ecosystems, mainly due to an economy based on the use of renewable and non-renewable resources. The current model of growth has had a critical impact on the environment and caused problems in the use, planning, and governance of natural resources. Attention to natural heritage is generally secondary. National development policies focus chiefly on economic indices, neglecting the social and natural capital that is indispensable if development is to be sustainable. The degradation of tropical forests, the Amazon biome, and coastal and marine ecosystems, especially mangroves and coral reefs, is of grave concern. Almost 5 million hectares were deforested each year from 2000 to 2005. At this rate, South America is losing 0.29% of its forested territory every year, while the Caribbean loses 0.92% and Mesoamerica is losing 1.20%. In South America alone, 45% of cultivated land is affected by degradation. The 4 main causes of this degradation are inequity, declining efficiency in the use of natural resources, greater per capita consumption, and the rise of human population. Latin America has more than 210 million hectares of protected natural areas distributed in more than 2,000 parks and reserves, but real protection is lacking for many of these due to their low priority in state investment. Exploitation of natural resources has surpassed the limits of sustainability. In the case of fishing, the effects of overexploitation have been compounded by climate phenomenon, impacting on the development of this activity and posing a severe challenge to the future of fishery production. While Latin America and the Caribbean possess 1/4 of the world's entire forests, in the last 13 years, this region has lost 50 million hectares of forest and arable land. The increase in mining and agricultural activities, as well as high population growth, has caused problems of water pollution in Latin America. Only 14% of the residual water from domestic consumption is channeled into treatment plants. Some 77 million people are without access to drinking water, and 100 million have no sanitation possibilities. There are serious conflicts over water with different uses, primarily human consumption, sanitation, industry, and agriculture vying for limited resources. Environmental problems are an underlying factor in the pervasive inequality afflicting Latin American societies. This is not only reflected in differences of income and access to services, but also in possibilities to participate, exercise power, and influence social policy. 44% of the Latin American population, or some 220 million people, live in poverty, with 100 million in conditions of extreme poverty. Efforts in the region to remedy this situation have been stalemated since 1997. In most of the Latin American societies, the 10% wealthiest individuals receive 40 to 47% of all income, while the 20% poorest receive just 2 to 4%. The quantity of poor people in Latin America and the Caribbean grows constantly, swelling from 110 million in 1960 to 136 million in 1980 and now numbering 226 million persons. Poverty is passed on from parents to children in Latin America. Those from poor families have less access to educational opportunities, training, and health care, and grow up in economically depressed settings lacking infrastructure and services. The onslaught of extreme events such as hurricanes, floods, storms, and drought usually impact on the more vulnerable populations. The phenomenon of El Niño and La Niña cause alterations in the climate, triggering fierce rains or extreme droughts, affecting the availability of fishery resources and increasing the alarming rate of glacier retreat. Despite this panorama, Latin America and the Caribbean have the capacity to fuel a new model of sustainable development.